couple other companies that I've looked at this week. Have you heard of Allbirds,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the shoe company?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I kind of like them. I almost bought some Allbirds, but I I don't know. It wasn't my style.
It wasn't your style. Okay,
No,
that's
but I
fair
like
enough.
them. I
Fair enough.
like, and they're very popular. I think their
Yeah.
flagship store is in Philadelphia.
Okay.
But I saw that the CFO of the company and four directors just bought, hundreds of thousands of shares. Um, and this past week, Allbirds is up 25%.
All right, let's get started. Welcome to the Angel Research Podcast. My name is Jason Freiert. I'm here today with the infamous Alex Boulden. Should we say infamous? The famous?
You can say whatever you want.
He's the editor of our Insider Stakeout. He's also a contributor and editor of the newly launched Rich Report. That's RICH.
Yes, sir.
Report. So we can talk about that a little bit. But let's jump right into it. What do you got? What do you got on the insider trading front? You're the insider. You're tracking these dudes. Are they still pumping and dumping? Or I guess they're not dumping. They're just buying stocks before stuff comes down.
Yes, I mean some of them are dumping, and I think to start it off, what I'm seeing in the market right now, you go home for like vacation. Thanksgiving is like a huge time where you go home, and families are always like, "Oh, so what's going on in the market?" Like, "Oh," and like it's like, "Oh, why did the market drop today?"
Yeah.
Why did it go up today? It's like, dude, I mean, you're watching the news, like, but I think the important thing to remember is to not pay attention to the mainstream media.
Right.
Because it doesn't matter. Like, we've seen, I just wanted to go over a couple, charts here because, and to show you how, like, patience and a long-term outlook and basically being a buy and hold investor has been paying off in spades.
Right.
Throughout the past couple of years, the pandemic, the new wars. So year to date, the NASDAQ, and it doesn't feel like this, right? Because you see it on the mainstream media, everything's going to hell in a handbasket. NASDAQ is up 36% year to date. That's fantastic. The S&P 500 up 18%. The Dow's up 5.5%. And if we're getting into crypto, which is now being called the most hated rally to end the year. But, this happens during the holidays. People come home, they're like, oh, what should I buy? And, everyone's always talking about Bitcoin.
I can't remember the 1 year, but it literally, Bitcoin, it was like that Sunday, that weekend of Thanksgiving,
Yes.
It went on. I mean, this was several years ago.
Yeah.
But it went on this epic rally, and it was everybody like, everybody's uncle at the Thanksgiving table is asking about Bitcoin, and they're talking to their nephew, and they're like, yeah, buy, and it just like exploded.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember buying into that rally too and being like, telling people like, you should probably speculate on this because it's going nuts right now. And right now, Bitcoin's up 120% year to date. Ethereum's up 68%.
Yeah, and it seemingly had a little bit, I mean, it's slowly, from its lows from last year, but it seemingly just recently has a little bit more life. It sort of broke out.
Yes.
And I'm assuming, we're going to see a little bit of at least hype or speculation heading into what's known as the Bitcoin halving, right? Which I haven't checked exactly when. Do you know when exactly it's supposed to go down? I think it might be April of next year.
Right?
Yeah, it's definitely next year. But I think it's not a set date because it depends on some stuff. But it's like around April. So usually 6 months before that happens, you start to see that. So could Thanksgiving dinner table discussion fully kick that off? Who knows?
Yeah, and it's just crazy to think that it's a completely, it's not completely separate from the stock market anymore. It kind of rides with the market's, momentum. which I didn't really see that happening when it first came out. I thought it was just going to be like a separate kind of asset class. And I think a lot of the momentum is being built around the halvening, and also the fact that the SEC might approve a Bitcoin ETF that tracks the spot price of Bitcoin. So I think people are anticipating that.
Yeah, that's a pretty big catalyst that has been out there for several years.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of people that think that that's going to be a huge catalyst because these institutions will pile in more. And I guess there's already been like the Grayscale ET. Is it even really an ETF or trust or whatever they call it?
It's a trust.
Yeah.
But they basically, it's what the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust and the Grayscale Ethereum Trust are the two, right?
Yeah, we just had our predictions episode with Brian and Alex, and Brian said he bought that Grayscale last year when we were talking about Bitcoin at 15,000, 16,000, and that has actually rallied, I think, more than Bitcoin actually has. So that one's a weird one. It's like it can, just like some of these ETFs, it can not exactly track the actual price of it, which I think is what they're trying to convert it to, is like, hey, this is actually going to track the price instead of, when people couldn't get into Bitcoin, they were bidding up the Grayscale ETF or trust, and it was like doubling past the actual net underlying value of the Bitcoin that was held in the trust.
Right.
So I guess if they get ETF status or these other ETFs launched, it'll be a little bit more of a one-to-one tracking that you would see with a traditional ETF.
And I think you'll probably see the true value of Bitcoin come out at that point, whether it's lower or higher. A lot of people are thinking it's worth a lot more than what it's tracking today.
Yeah, and I guess we'll see. I mean, the sort of the theory has been a lot of these institutions are getting their chips settled for that inevitably to come down. However, interest rates are higher, so the idea is there's less speculative money flowing around into some of these assets, and in a high interest rate environment, can crypto sort of fly? But I guess we'll see. You also are sort of interested in another way to play that, though, as well, which is the miners.
Yeah, that's another way you can, because a lot of people don't want to peg themselves to Bitcoin or Ethereum. That it's still volatile, I mean, if you're buying and holding, I guess if you have that mindset, then it's not as volatile. But day-to-day price swings are, 5%, 6%. I think it's down like 4 or 5% today.
Yeah, it's just that's just normal.
Yeah. And hopefully some of this will stabilize that volatility. But there are also Bitcoin miners, just like if you have gold and you have gold miners.
Right.
You also have Bitcoin miners. And, it's just crazy to think that I started hearing about crypto back in 2010, around that time. And I actually, I knew people who were mining Bitcoin, and they admitted that they didn't even really know what they were doing. Yeah. And I think one of them even just like got rid of his laptop, like eventually, and he was like, oh, whatever, like I'm getting a new one, like none of this is going to be worth anything anyway. It's like, oh my God. So
and now they're searching the trash can for that old laptop.
But
but these miners that you're talking about, these are like legit operations now, like across
legit companies,
data centers, and they've got massive GPUs that are just mining 24/7.
Yep. And what I really like, I found a company called TerraWolf, and they're based out of Easton, Maryland, so like right down the road from here. And they're a fully renewable Bitcoin miner. So they use solar and nuclear power to mine Bitcoin. It's pretty cool. So they're self-sustainable.
Yeah, because I guess the big input is just like most stuff, but particularly with crypto mining is just the energy, right?
Yes.
So you'll see a lot of people trying to. I know there's big data centers out in Iceland because they're kind of powered by the geothermal that you can get from the volcano. Of course, now like Iceland might have a huge volcano and that might go away. So I don't know if that's the play here, but if you can get your energy costs low enough, then it becomes profitable.
Yep.
It's basically just like gold mining.
Yeah.
If your input costs are lower than what you're extracting, then you have a huge amount of leverage. So it's sometimes hard for people to grasp the digital aspect of it, but if you just compare it to just like putting stuff out of the ground, the thing is though is at least you you have a reasonable expectation that like when you're mining Bitcoin that you're actually going to get Bitcoin, and you're not just like kind of like, I hope gold's here. Like we did some drilling results. I think it's going to be here. I guess we'll see. There's a little bit more like, hey, if you do XYZ for a period, you at least know you're going to get some Bitcoin.
Yep. A little bit at least. But yeah, I mean, these are legit companies. They're starting to turn profit. So, and a lot of them are penny stocks.
Right.
So you can get in for $1, and that's way cheaper than Bitcoin. And if I guess the theory is when Bitcoin goes up, their reserves are going to go up as well, their cash reserves. So
yeah, and these are companies you can buy on the stock exchange. You don't need a separate account. You already have your brokerage account. You can just you can put money directly into. Are most of these trading on like regular U.S. exchanges?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the ones that I'm seeing, there might be some over the counter, but I mean, NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange. So
yeah, I mean, miners were huge the last time crypto ran up, and if we do see that going into 2024, that is something that should definitely take a look at.
Yeah. Also on that same note, an insider who is a famous crypto crypto bull is Cathie Wood, and she owns the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust in her ARK Invest portfolio.
Okay.
And I was just researching and found that she sold $6 million worth amid this recent rally. So she's taken some profits. So
okay, so maybe she's not expecting an imminent run up, but she's also been wrong before.
Yeah, but they've been investing for a while, so I think she.
Yeah, you're in early. It's always about when you get in, right? Like, it might be for somebody that just bought, and it goes down. They're like, but if you've been in it for a couple of years and you're taking money off the table, then
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So what else we got here on the like Congress insider trading? Do we have any funny business going on? I know there's been a lot of talk of there's conflict in the Middle East. Is there some shenanigans going on?
So I think a lot of the headlines around this are a little overblown. Like I've got a headline from Boulden saying that Congress buys up war stocks ahead of Hamas attack on Israel. And sure enough, obviously after the attack, shares of Northrop Grumman climbed 10% in a day. You've got Lockheed Martin and other defense stocks. But I really think that's a little misleading to put those two together because Congress is always buying defense stocks.
Right.
Like it's obvious. It's the one thing that
it's
Congress
a
can agree on.
long-term trend. It's not like they're like, hey, we know Israel's going to get attacked.
Yeah. It makes a good headline.
Yeah, for sure.
But what they're talking about is what I found was that House Democrat Josh Gottheimer bought Northrop Grumman on September 26th. Daniel Goldman bought in March. And then House Republican Kevin Hern bought Lockheed Martin on June 23rd. So it's obviously, not right before the attack happened, a couple months.
Well, that would be a little bit too obvious too. But also, these disclosures don't come out. What's typically the delay?
It's I think, well, they're supposed to report it, and then on their, so for institutions, the 13F will come out. It's usually every quarter.
Right.
The congressional trades are supposed to be submitted like immediately.
Okay,
or
and
within
immediately
like 30
published.
days.
Oh, within 30 days, yeah.
But a lot of them don't do that. I mean, there was a big article on this recently that really detailed like how many members of Congress have just been ignoring the Stock Act or the Stop Trading on Congressional Knowledge.
Well,
Act.
because isn't the fine like $200 or something if you
it's
don't?
Like $250.
If you don't, and these guys are making way more than that. So it's just like, hey, if there's not enough public outcry that's going to affect them getting elected, then they're just like, whatever.
Yeah.
Or maybe they just forget. Maybe they honestly forget.
Okay,
they're
give
not
them the benefit of the doubt.
right.
I also think a lot of them don't care. And
yeah, it's sort of, each time they are supposedly going to end this so-called ban trading, the stock trading for Congress, and it just sort of, it's in the headlines for a week or two, and then it just sort of fades away.
It never gets in any bills, and it's always just like, and because I think the public also doesn't really understand it that well. Like, they don't understand how much knowledge people in Congress have of like future events.
Yeah, well, particularly like you said with defense stocks and stuff like that. It's not necessarily that they know a war is going to break out, but they do know that in 6 months, whatever the budget is going to come out, and them or their buddy is on the committee and they did a favor for somebody else, and they know that they're going to approve an increase in that budget, so it's just kind of a no-brainer to do that. I mean, that's basically what you're doing in your service too, is looking at a lot of these signals of, hey, like, they're not gonna put their money into something that they knowingly know is gonna end in it, and that they're not gonna approve the funding for.
Yeah,
so
exactly. Unless they're like really strapped and like trying to pump up the stock, but I mean, usually that doesn't work.
Yeah, and these are typically not penny stocks per se that they're putting in. Like you're talking about, large defense contractors that everybody can see are doing in this climate are doing very well, regardless.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about what I research is I'm kind of in the dark as well. Like, I don't know what's going to happen around the corner, but I know that these insiders at companies and congressional members are buying stock, like you said. So it kind of seems like a no-brainer to just follow what they're doing.
Right.
Like,
yeah, it doesn't necessarily. It's a good signal.
Yeah. Exactly.
It doesn't necessarily mean that like, a deal is imminent or all this.
Yeah.
There's but it does at least indicate that they know that, hey, nothing is coming down the pike that they're aware of that's going to hinder it. There's always black swan events like COVID, although a lot of the congressional people were selling stocks prior to it really
They really did.
coming out to that it was bad. I know there was probably like a month or two where they were trying to calm down the public, but the people in the know were like, okay, this is probably going to be something that's pretty bad.
Yeah.
So, But I mean, I guess the old if you can't beat them, join them, and you can try to get the laws changed, or you can just follow along and try to use that to help your own portfolio.
Yep, and you can get a good understanding of trends that way. A lot of this year, especially, energy companies have just been, really taking off.
Right.
And a lot of insiders have been buying energy companies. So if you just look at that,
Yeah, I mean Buffett uh, bought what was it Occidental? There seems to be
yep,
some, and going back to Congress too. If they're buying that sort of stuff, you kind of know like, hey, maybe there's going to be some loosening in the regulations, or they're at least not going to be as heavy-handed with some of these push towards renewables or like no longer drilling type thing.
yeah, we'll see about the drilling. Um, the interesting thing about Occidental is that they're heavily investing in carbon capture technology, which I find pretty fascinating. Um, it's a little controversial,
Yeah,
but
so I mean, let's talk about carbon capture. They're basically just sucking they're just sucking the carbon out of the air. Is that basically, and then what exactly do they do with it?
so it's stored underground. So it's basically you're getting like a negative net effect on carbon.
Right. And they just store it underground. Is thousands of years from now people going to be mining this underground carbon that's getting sucked out of the air? And they're basically doing it because the government is giving them money to do it. Is that basically the bottom line? Because that's not a product that
I mean,
people want.
right? Yeah, I guess that's a bigger question about ESG uh, investing in general. Do companies actually care about the environment? Probably not. They care about money.
Right.
So if they're going to get money from the government to do something, they're probably going to do it.
Yeah, and this latest, I guess it was um, I don't know what they called it. Was it the Inflation Reduction Act or whatever? There was a lot of stuff that
Yeah.
had little to do with inflation in there, but one of them was increasing the size of these credits that people can get
Hmm.
for, I guess, sucking carbon out of the air, and you can get
Yeah.
them for just having a bunch of trees on your
Yeah.
farmland.
Yeah. It's weird.
Yeah. So, are there companies out there that are specific? Is it these big companies like Occidental? I saw, it seems like, some of these oil companies or even Exxon's
Hmm.
huge into the carbon capture, which
Yeah.
sort of makes sense. Are there companies out there that are specifically just, I guess, like running these plants or developing the technology, I guess, building
Yeah.
some of the stuff?
Some of the equipment. Yeah, for sure. There's a bunch of them. Um, I don't want to give it away. We've got one in our portfolio right now, and it's doing well. It's getting a lot of attention from institutions and
Okay.
big investors. So
And
um,
these guys actually building the actual plants? Are they running
hmm
them?
yep, they're doing everything,
All of it.
and they're selling a lot of their equipment to bigger companies
Okay.
here in the U.S.
Okay. So, if some of those bigger companies are really in it, they could look at acquisition or something like that. So,
Yep,
and what portfolio is that in?
that's in the insider stakeout
Okay.
portfolio.
All
Yep,
right. Well,
I've
we'll put a
got two portfolios. But yeah, this one's in the insider stakeout
Okay.
portfolio.
Yeah. So we'll put a link below the video for anybody interested in checking that out and joining your service.
Yep, we like it. I think it's a good one.
All right. Excellent.
Yeah, and in terms of other energy companies that I'm seeing, there's a lot of insider trading going on in Babcock and Wilcox.
Okay. What do
Um,
they do?
so they're a massive American energy company. They're into renewables, solar. They convert waste to energy and like biomass to energy.
Okay.
But they also are a nuclear power company.
Okay.
And we traded this stock earlier this year for a 25% gain when we saw that insiders were buying.
Mm-hmm.
But just this week, I got a print that the CFO, the senior vice president, and the CEO, and also 3 directors, just bought, almost 10 million shares.
Okay.
And this past week, it's up 23%.
Just in the past week.
Yep.
Okay. So there's a good good prospects there that at least the leadership thinks it's a good time to get in.
And it's still very cheap. And I mean, for a company that's doing so much and working with nuclear, which we've talked about a lot here at Angel.
Yeah.
I think it's a good one to jump on.
Yeah, I mean, barring any massive safety meltdown situations, it seems like once Fukushima is in the rearview mirror, people tend to slowly start to come back around to nuclear. It's like a weird cycle and there's just been so much advancement just in the recent. I know Keith's big on the small modular reactors.
Yeah.
That are popping up, and I know like China doesn't really care. They're gonna go full blown nuclear, even if they have a meltdown. They're just gonna do it because they have to,
Mm-hmm.
right? They really they have to keep up to their energy demand.
Yeah, and I mean, it would be nice to see companies do that, do it safely and not have anything go wrong. So, but yeah, like you said, I mean, safety advancements have come a long way. And yeah, hopefully we can see some companies taking off from that.
What company was that again? Babcock
and Wilcox.
Babcock and Wilcox. I like that name of that company.
It's a good name.
Yeah, it sounds kind of like a law firm though.
I think it's trading for like a little over $1.
Okay.
So that's that's a
All
good
right.
penny stock.
Yeah, that's your hot tip for listening to the podcast.
Yeah.
Direct from Alex.
Couple other companies that I've looked at this week. Have you heard of Allbirds?
Yeah.
The shoe company?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I kind of like them. I almost bought some Allbirds, but I don't know. It wasn't my style.
It wasn't your style. Okay,
No.
that's
but
fair
I
enough.
like them.
Fair enough.
And they're very popular. I think
Yeah.
their flagship store is in Philadelphia.
Okay.
But I saw that the CFO of the company and 4 directors just bought, hundreds of thousands of shares. And this past week, Allbirds is up 25%.
Okay.
So, but, granted, the stock market has been really hot recently. So
yeah, after that inflation report earlier this week, it seems like people maybe think that
it's over.
That it's over. There's still a lot of headwinds, it seems, in certain areas, but I think it's becoming more and more likely maybe that the Fed is going to, at the very least, just sort of pause where they're at for a good while. So hopefully that is a good indicator. And then the idea of a Santa Claus rally. Do you think there's going to be a big Santa Claus rally heading into this year?
Was there a Santa Claus rally last year?
I cannot remember.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there was for a little bit. So let's just
last
yes.
year. Yeah, yes. Okay. We'll hold you to it. Next time we'll come back and we'll see if that actually happened. Excellent. All right. Well, is there any other hot tips you want to drop before we wrap this up, or?
Yeah, I got one more for you.
Bonus pick.
We got your favorite cereal maker, Kellogg's. This is pretty rare because I haven't seen insider trading in the company. But just this week, A ton of people bought shares. It was the chief supply chain officer, the CLO and secretary, the chief executive officer, the CFO, the chief growth officer, and the chief customer officer. I mean, that's the entire C-suite.
Mm-hmm.
They just all bought tons of shares. So in this past month, it's up 11%. I haven't looked into maybe why they were buying, but it's an interesting play.
Yeah, that is interesting considering there has been this idea that the consumer is starting to be weaker because of inflation. However, Kellogg's, staple food, cereal, like I think people are going to keep buying that. They're going to cut back in other more discretionary spending. I think they're going to make sure their kids want to still eat that delicious sugary cereal that I'm sure is very healthy.
It's so bad for you. I used to eat that all the time. It's so It's so bad. But it's cheap.
Okay.
So people
Yeah,
buy
I
it.
like that. Okay. All right. Well, you got some good insider tips from Alex Boulden, the managing director of Insider Stakeout, and he's also got that super secret carbon capture play. If you want to check that out, we'll put the link in the description below. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks.
And remember to like, subscribe, and comment below. And we will promptly ignore your comment. No, we'll respond to it. All right. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Adios.